Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Crypto Miners Twitter space. Mary here, and I will be your host. And Alpha, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. So a reminder that anything we talk about in here is for educational purpose only and should not be taken as a financial advice. And you do your own research. I won't do it for you, and we are only talking about the projects in here. So with that said, today we have Moonbeam and Moonriver with us. And Mr. Francisco Agosti, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you
Great.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. I guess you can hear me too, since you answered.
Yeah, for sure. I can hear you fine. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Yeah, we're looking forward to have you here. So welcome to Crypto Miners. We are thrilled to hear more about Moonbeam and also a little bit about Moonriver. I think you are like sisters or brothers or something. But yeah, but first, let's talk a little bit about you. Who are you to these projects, and when did you start with crypto, and when did you start with Moonbeam?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Francisco. I work on ecosystem development and growth for Moonbeam and Moonriver. I joined the project approximately a little more than 2 years ago. So yeah, we joined well before we launched either of the networks. And yeah, my job is basically getting more teams to deploy on Moonbeam and Moonriver, and then supporting them once they've deployed to make sure that they're successful.
Great. So you started with Moonriver, right? To launch Moonriver, and then Moonbeam came as because we actually had Polkadot over here, and I know you're built on Polkadot. And it's very interesting to see now a project who actually built there after we heard from Polkadot. So that's going to be very interesting. So as I understood it, Moonriver was built on Kusama first, right? As a test run, or I don't know the words maybe, but can you explain a little bit more about what is Moonbeam, what is Moonriver maybe? Just an overview
For sure.
first.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'd be glad to give an intro on that. So, I mean, the team set out to build Moonbeam because we were very much attracted by the vision of Polkadot and Kusama, right? These, I would say, they come down to maybe two main concepts. One of which is the idea that blockchains should be specialized, that there wasn't going to be just one blockchain that did everything well, that managed everything in Web3, but that there were going to be just like many blockchains, right? That each had a very specialized use case that it did very well. So we believed in that, and then combining that with the idea that there should be a network of all these specialized blockchains where they can communicate each other, right? So then you get kind of this network effect that's quite powerful because you have these specialized chains that can then leverage the specialization of another chain within that same network, right? It's kind of this idea of comparative advantage where one country can focus on producing one thing very well, and then it can kind of leverage or trade with another company that produces something else very well. So then it's a much more efficient system. So we were very much attracted by that vision, and we knew that that's where the industry was heading in general. But we did see kind of like an opportunity we just saw that since Polkadot uses a different tech stack, uses Substrate and Rust, the barrier of entry for developers was going to be higher than something like Ethereum, for example, that already had a very adopted and well-established network of developers. So we saw an opportunity to leverage that adoption that the Ethereum world and space has with these new innovations that Polkadot was putting forth, right? And that's essentially what Moonbeam became. It's just an implementation of Ethereum on Polkadot as a parachain, right? Because Polkadot has like the relay chain, which is kind of the center, the hub of Polkadot. And then it has what you call parallel blockchains called parachains. that each kind of attach to the relay chain, and each parachain has a specialized use case. And Moonbeam is just one of those parachains that's specialized in Ethereum compatibility. And for Moonriver, it's the equivalent, but on Kusama, which I'll get to after. So that's kind of where what the intention was for Moonbeam. And for the most part, I think we managed to achieve what we set out to do. We've gotten quite a lot of traction. I think a lot of it has kind of derived from the fact that we're Ethereum compatible, right? Because in the last years, you kind of saw the rise of all these EVM compatible chains, such as BNB, Phantom, Avalanche, Polygon, and Moonbeam kind of became that natural partner for developers that wanted to adopt their multi-chain strategy for Polkadot, right? Since you can just leverage your existing contracts or your code base that you have on Ethereum, copy paste it onto Moonbeam, and then it works seamlessly, and you have access to this broader Polkadot ecosystem, all the while not having to learn Rust or Substrate. You can just use Solidity smart contracts, MetaMask, all the tools that you're used to using on Ethereum. I think that's how we managed to get a lot of traction. But since then, we've thought a lot more about what makes Moonbeam actually different, right? Since times have changed since then, and there's so many different chains now, and EVM compatibility is great, but it doesn't really differentiate you from other chains, right? And if you try to differentiate the chain, we started thinking more about this, right? Like, what is the differentiation of Moonbeam? If you start trying to argue like, okay, how cheap is the chain, how fast it is, it's an uphill battle since there's just so many chains trying to tackle these spaces. Yeah. So we decided we really wanted to lean into this interoperability narrative, right? That is inherently part of our capability, being part of the Polkadot ecosystem. So right now we're positioning Moonbeam as kind of the best chain to build cross-chain use cases. And we're calling it specifically like this concept called connected contracts. And this is the idea that a smart contract or an application that is built on Moonbeam isn't confined to the Moonbeam network, right? That a contract on Moonbeam can call functions or features or interact with contracts on Ethereum or Avalanche or Phantom or whatever the chain may be. Because what we observed in the last years is basically there was a huge rise in multi-chain deployments, but essentially the way these deployments were carried out is that projects would essentially copy paste their code onto an instance of their protocol onto many different chains, right? Like SushiSwap we always use SushiSwap as an example of this because they were the first to kind of, or one of the first to deploy on like 16 different chains. The problem was that at the time, SushiSwap on Ethereum couldn't necessarily interact with SushiSwap on Avalanche, for example. So as a result, you got kind of fragmented deployments of that protocol where users were confined to a given chain and you couldn't interact between chains, right? So then that causes a lot of fragmentation with liquidity, fragmentation with users. It's capital inefficient. The user experience is a lot worse, right? Because you're exposing the end user to a lot of the complexity that is involved with having to switch chains, having to switch network on MetaMask. It just becomes a little bit messy, right? So what we're seeing now is the space shifting into more of this, and it's also called like omni-chain, for example, where on the back end, the application might be calling functions across many different chains, but on the front end, there'll be like a unified UI where the user might click a button and they have no idea what's happening on the back end, and you're abstracting away a lot of the infrastructural complexity. And yeah, that's where we see kind of the industry heading, right? So at a layer one level, we're trying to position Moonbeam as the best chain to build these type of cross-chain applications. And then for Moonriver is basically the same code base as Moonbeam, but it's launched as a parachain on Kusama instead of Polkadot. And this can be confusing for like a lot of people. I think Kusama was originally launched as it's called like a canary network. It's kind of an experimental network, basically, where it was intended to act as a network for developers to ship code and new features into like a real, like a network under real economic conditions. Because what happens is that with testnets, when you ship new things, unless there's like real value on the line, users simply won't react the same way to that new thing, right? It's kind of, if you think of it like playing poker, when you play poker, if the chips have no value, you're going to go all in every round, right? You're not playing as you really would. So this is kind of the idea of what Kusama represented. So Moonriver is the same as Moonbeam. It's kind of this experimental network where teams can deploy their code there first under real economic conditions before shipping it to Moonbeam. And since then, it's kind of evolved into a thing of its own with its own community. And yeah, that's kind of the concept behind everything. I know I just said a lot of information, so
you answered like 5 of my questions.
Yeah.
Very good. So Moonriver was launched first, right? To try out before you launched the real one, which was Moonbeam. But both are real, but on different chains. And Kusama is the test chain for Polkadot, as Moonriver is a test chain for Moonbeam, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't like using the word test chain because I mean there's value, right? It's not it's not like just test tokens. There's actually value to the tokens.
But would you say that if someone wants to launch a project on Moonbeam, they would benefit to try and launch it first on Moonriver to test it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what that was the original intention, right? That you can kind of launch things, or if you have new code or new features that you want to ship to your protocol, you kind of ship it first on Kusama and Moonriver, and then you kind of go to Moonbeam. So yeah, that was kind of the concept that led to Kusama and Moonriver.
And the intention there is to try and find the errors and wrongs that you can correct them before you launch on Moonbeam, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's see what other questions I have.
Yeah, no worries. And I can also give examples on, I think for us, like right now, we're investing almost all of our energy into this concept of connected contracts.
Yeah, tell me more about that, connected contracts. What exactly, can you give an example what that can be?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I can give an example of a protocol that's deploying on Moonbeam very soon. It's called the Prime protocol. And basically what these guys are doing, it's a lending and borrowing protocol similar to kind of like what MakerDAO would be like, where you lock collateral and you get stable coin in return. But traditionally lending and borrowing protocols, I mean, you need to have the collateral on the chain where you're going to take out the loan, right? So for example, if you want to take out a loan on Maker on Ethereum, you need to lock up collateral on Ethereum in order to take out a DAI loan. The problem that comes from a multi-chain deployment is that you might have like a compound fork on Ethereum or a compound fork on Avalanche, but if you have your collateral on Ethereum, but you want to take out the loan on Moonbeam, for example, a user would be obligated to bridge over that collateral into Moonbeam, right? Because they need to have the collateral on the chain they're taking out the loan. And already the fact that they need to bridge, this already causes issues, right? Like users in general, like bridges are complicated. It creates user friction. Each specific bridge that's connected to a given network will create like a different wrapped representation of a given asset. So if you have many bridges connecting to a network, each of them will have like a different type of stablecoin or a different flavor of USDC, for example, that are not compatible with each other. So this comes back to this like liquidity fragmentation issue I was referring to. So it's capital inefficient, right? It just becomes more expensive for the protocol to kind of to shift all this liquidity around, and ultimately the end user is the one that suffers. So what Prime is doing is basically, instead of obligating the user to like bridge over collateral into the chain where they want to take a loan, they're going to deploy on Moonbeam kind of the brain or the hub of their deployment, and they're going to have like deployments of Prime protocol on many other chains. But for example, if you have collateral on Ethereum, but you want to take out a loan on Moonbeam, it'll actually send a message back and forth between the two networks, and it'll kind of understand, okay, Mary has collateral on Ethereum. Let's allow her to take out the loan out on Moonbeam without obligating her to physically bridge in that collateral from chain to chain. So now it's different, right? You're no longer bridging. The protocol kind of understands what the state is on each chain and what user has in each wallet of each chain. And it can kind of detect and read the state of each deployment on each chain. And now you can just aggregate liquidity on every chain, right? It becomes a lot more capital efficient because you're no longer fragmenting liquidity across all these different deployments that you have. So yeah, this is an example of where you're using kind of connected contracts because you're kind of interacting between contracts on two chains. But it goes beyond like the traditional bridging use cases that we've seen so far, which is just asset transfers, right? You use a bridge to transfer an asset from chain A to chain B. This is more like messaging between chains and sending
Yeah, here's
information.
you don't send the token itself or the coin itself. You send
Yeah,
the message or the information that you have a
exactly.
token. Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
So, and in order to do that, we're working with a lot of like these general message passing protocols like Axelar, Layer Zero, Hyperlane, Wormhole. These are all kind of they're bridges, but they go beyond kind of these asset transfer scenarios. It's more about sending, like you just said, information between chains. And we just like deeply believe that that's going to give birth to a new generation of applications and how applications are built in Web3. And I honestly believe it's just inevitable that the industry will head into this space because it improves UX for one. This is one of the big things that I think is a huge problem with Web3 right now is that the UX is not very good. Since now, like the user, and while all this is happening, the user is literally just clicking a button, right? They have no idea that which messages are being sent where between what blockchains. This is all happening in an automated fashion on the back end. And also, it's like I said, it's just more efficient, right? For the protocol itself, it's more efficient to leverage capital between chains instead of having to bridge over assets everywhere. So this is just one example of what is possible with connected contracts, and you can maybe apply this to like NFTs, to gaming, to different DeFi protocols, to different protocols within DeFi, right? There's probably things that I don't even know right now that are going to be possible in the future, but we're just kind of focusing our energy to have the infrastructure in place so that developers, when they want to build these applications, they look around and they say, okay, Moonbeam has this general message passing protocol, since they all have like different trade-offs, for example. So some are faster, some are slower, some have like security trade-offs. There's going to be a bunch of tooling, for example, that's going to be necessary, like blockchain explorers that are capable of reading like cross-chain transactions, or wallets that are able to do cross-chain transactions. There's basically every tool right now that you can imagine on Ethereum or on any given chain. You can kind of expand that use case to become cross-chain, right? And we expect that in the next maybe year or 2 years, there's just going to be a huge design space kind of development in this area for to cater towards these use cases.
So was the main intention of the developers of Moonbeam, right? Or the team who did Moonbeam, to have the Ethereum-based projects come over to Polkadot in a very more simple way, that they didn't have to go through everything that you did, like trying to claim this space. It's like a competition on Polkadot, right? To claim the space, you have to crowdfund or stake your dots to get a spot to build there. And now you did that for everyone, so now they can build on top on you instead. That's how I kind of understood
that's
it.
correct. Yeah, that's correct. In order to launch a parachain, I mean, there's a process, right? There's a
Yeah,
barrier of entry.
and cost.
So like, yeah, and cost, and also just infrastructure, right? Like you need to know, okay, how do I launch a chain? I have to bootstrap like a validator set. Okay, I have to get all the tooling in place. So it beyond like the cost, it's also just effort and time and knowledge that you need to invest. Whereas with Moonbeam, you can kind of just adopt a smart contract approach, which is much simpler for most teams.
And then my question is then your network then open source? Can anyone just use it, or do you charge something for it because you did this process already? So you have like a company?
Yeah, no, the code base is fully open source. Like anyone can find it on in GitHub. And in terms of cost, I mean, the network is permissionless, right? Like anyone can deploy a smart contract on Moonbeam. They'll have to pay like the gas to deploy to execute a smart contract, but it's permissionless.
And the gas are in your own token then?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what is it called again? Wait.
Glimmer, GLMR.
Sorry?
Glimmer,
Glimmer,
GLMR.
exactly. Yeah, it's a really beautiful name, Glimmer. And then on Moonriver, it's MNROV or something.
Mover, yeah, Mover. MOVR.
Okay, Mover and Glimmer. That's great names, I think. Yeah. So can we back up a little bit to the start of Moonbeam? It started in January this year, right? A year ago. You have almost birthday soon, I guess. So were you there from the start?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the launch was in January of this year, but I mean, a ton of work went
Yeah,
into
of
the
course.
project well before that. I mean, I think the team had been working on that since maybe mid 2019, something like this, early
Okay.
2020. So there a ton of work went into kind of writing the code, building out the network. I joined like in October 2020, where we had just launched the testnet, and at that time it was just speaking to teams that were interested in deploying on Polkadot and garnering enough like attention and commitments from teams to deploy on the network once we launched on mainnet.
So was it from the start decided that it was going to be on Polkadot, or why Polkadot?
Yeah. From the start, we wanted to build on Polkadot since the beginning, we were just attracted by the vision of interoperability. We just knew that like the Web3 space in general was going to be like permanently multi-chain. So we just thought that approaching it from an angle of how can we position ourselves in an interoperable kind of environment, that was going to be a winning kind of strategy, right? Because I think it's difficult to argue nowadays that the industry is not already like permanently, it's not already multi-chain. So the case now becomes like, okay, how do you best position yourselves to like to thrive and succeed in like an interoperable environment? And this is kind of why we're attracted to Polkadot.
Okay. So are you working together with Polkadot in any way, or like how does the cooperation then work between you two?
Yeah, I mean, I think Parity, the team behind Polkadot, have been very supportive. I mean, essentially, they just built the entire technology that we're building on, right? So, I mean, they have quite a neutral stance when it comes to, because and at the end of the day, they've kind of built this layer zero, so to speak. And then many teams are using their technology to build parachains, right? So from their point of view, they want to support every parachain. So, but they have been quite supportive, and we're happy to have built on Polkadot for sure.
Very good. So also now moving forward, then is there something that you can tell us that you're building on, or because it's like a bear market, people say now, and that means for lots of projects that have been around for a bit, or like this project has like some sustainability to it. You're building, I'm guessing. So what are you building on, and what's the next from Moonbeam?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and the market conditions are super rough right now. I think everyone's feeling it a lot throughout the industry. But yeah, I think the recent meltdown with FTX is, for me personally, I think it's a clear indication that DeFi is incredibly important, right? A lot of the things that have happened in Web3 recently are just from centralized entities that are acting beyond kind of the confines of DeFi, and they're not being regulated. But meanwhile, like all these DeFi protocols have acted exactly like they should, right? And this is just a clear indication to me that transparency and decentralization are indeed like very important within this space, and we continue to bet on that. For us personally, and this is also why like we're attracted by Polkadot, because their values are very much aligned with that mentality. For us personally, I mean, this year, I think for us, governance is a huge topic. So we're going to be rolling out OpenGov, which is something specific to Polkadot. It's a very complex, but kind of wholly built governance mechanism so that the community can vote on the outcome of decisions made on Moonbeam. So this is one of the things of Polkadot, is that you don't have like these hard forks when the network disagrees with each other. There is a governance voting process, and the community essentially votes on anything that could affect the network. Obviously, the first iterations of governance had issues, right? There's some things that need to be addressed, and now Polkadot is rolling out this new version of governance, which is complex, but it takes into account a lot of scenarios. It basically just kind of optimizes it. So that's one thing that we're going to be investing a lot of time on, since we're taking, I mean, we want to head into this direction where decentralization is actually a real thing, and that there's no centralized entity taking decisions on the network. And then it's, continuing to find use cases for connected contracts, continuing to find high quality teams to build on Moonbeam to grow the network. And yeah, that's kind of what we're focusing on. Another thing that we're doing from a technical perspective that we're continuing to do is working on what we call like pre-compiled contracts. So this essentially allows you to use and tap into like Polkadot native functionalities. For example, staking, governance, XCM, which XCM is basically this cross-chain messaging language that's native to Polkadot. You can use all these things on Moonbeam, but using kind of Ethereum native tools. So like, for example, MetaMask or Solidity smart contracts, so that developers can use these features that are specific to Polkadot without having to learn Substrate and Rust. So I think that's quite useful for developers, and it's a great, I think it's a powerful thing for Moonbeam, right? Because developers can just continue to use Solidity, and users can use MetaMask to do things like staking, voting, and governance, using XCM to kind of leverage functions of other parachains within Polkadot, but they don't need to like learn anything of Substrate, right? So which I think is important.
And I have a couple of questions about this, because you can now, since you are building on Polkadot, you can also use all their good tools and features, right? And their you automatically get their security inbuilt
exactly.
in your
and then
network.
That's correct. And then I mean, Ethereum has, I guess, they've shifted to a proof of stake network now, but in the past it was proof of work, right? So like, while Moonbeam was an implementation of Ethereum, it does have like functionalities that are specific to Polkadot because we're built on Polkadot, right? So things like governance, staking, which previously wasn't available on Ethereum. XCM is like, okay, it's like this message passing that we were talking about before, but it's like kind of specific to Polkadot, and it's a much kind of richer messaging language that's only available for parachains within Polkadot. So there's going to be a bunch of interactions that happen between chains on Polkadot, and all those things are available to Moonbeam developers without having to learn kind of Substrate.
And you're also the only parachain or project who can help other projects from Ethereum network to come over to Polkadot. Is that correct?
Not entirely. I mean, there is kind of a public.
I mean, without the bridge, because as you said in the beginning, I could take an Ethereum contract and just put it on Moonbeam without changing anything, without making like a bridge or a V2 or on my contract, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And I mean, other parachains within Polkadot do have like an EVM kind of palette or module within their chain. The difference being is that we went further to kind of make it entirely compatible with Ethereum. So I'll give you an example. Like the account structure on Moonbeam, we changed kind of the underlying account structure to be exactly like on Ethereum, which are like H160 accounts with ECDSA signing mechanism. Whereas with traditional parachains on Polkadot, they just have like a Substrate-styled account system and signing mechanism, which ultimately results like in compatibility differences, right? Like users on Moonbeam can use just MetaMask exactly like they would on Ethereum. Whereas with other parachains, you have to have kind of a Substrate wallet that is then mapped with a MetaMask wallet. So it's a little bit more complicated for the end user.
Very complicated.
Yeah. So for us, it was important that like the user can just, it's completely seamless, right? Which has led, it's had trade-offs, right? Outward facing towards developers, it's been great. But then inwards facing into Polkadot, we're kind of the outliers because we have this different account structure. So for some integrations, for some projects, it's led to complications as they kind of had to adapt to our account structure. So it has had like trade-offs, but yeah, it's in my opinion, it's been worth it, and it's been one of the reasons why the barrier of entry for developers into Moonbeam has been very low.
So what would you say? Who are you mainly targeting? I mean, who's your main customer or user? Who benefits the most from Moonbeam at this moment?
We're targeting developers. I mean, we're a developer-centric platform. I would say we're focused on infrastructure. So for us, our customers are teams, right? Application teams that want to build on Moonbeam, who they in turn then attract the end user, right? But for us, we want to make sure that they have all the best tools in place to build their apps. And that's kind of, that's been my job over the last 2 years. It's kind of speaking to teams, building out the ecosystem as a result of having conversations with projects, right? That say, look, I can't deploy on Moonbeam unless you have like a Chainlink Oracle integration, or an indexer like the Graph, or a multi-signature wallet like Gnosis Safe. All these kind of complementary tools are essential for a project to be able to build successfully, right? So that's been our job, is to kind of put all this infrastructure in place so that teams can build.
And if there are any teams or developers in here who now get interested in Moonbeam, how can they reach out? Where's the best forum for them?
Yeah, I would say our Discord channel is a great place to engage, or on Telegram, and you can find it on our site, moonbeam.network. If you just scroll down to the footer, you can find all the social links. But yeah, I would say our team is very engaged and responsive to anyone who wants to build something on Moonbeam. The foundation also has a grants program, so anyone who's interested in trying to receive a grant to bootstrap a project on Moonbeam, they can apply for a grant as well. We have a developer relations team that's very engaged and that helps answer questions for devs that are run into either technical difficulties or they just have technical questions in general about building on Moonbeam. So yeah, and in that regard, we try to be as responsive and supportive as possible for teams that are curious to or that want to build on Moonbeam.
That's great. Do we have any teams here that you see that are building on Moonbeam today that maybe wants to come up and speak a little bit? So just raise your hand if you're here and want to give us some insight why you choose Moonbeam. That would be interesting. So how would you say let's go back to the tokens or the token. It's used mainly for fees on your parachain or your blockchain, and staking also, right, to secure the
so
value.
you can use it to, I mean, it's the underlying token of the network, so you use it to execute smart. You use it to pay for fees, like you said. You use it for staking, to vote in governance motions.
Oh yeah, voting too. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I would say those are kind of the main functions.
Mm-hmm. And how high is the fee? Is that like very less than Ethereum probably? Every fee is less than Ethereum.
It's significantly less than Ethereum. Yeah.
That's a stupid question, Mary. Everything is less than Ethereum. It's the most expensive blockchain. Everyone seems to like it anyway. Still, I don't get it personally. Sorry, Ethereum people, but it's too expensive. So let's see. You have something called Moonbeam Foundation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I mean, personally, I work for a company called PureStake, and PureStake is kind of a development company. So we have kind of a service provider relationship with the Moonbeam Foundation. The Moonbeam Foundation is the organization that kind of manages the Moonbeam network, and we act kind of as a development company on behalf of the foundation. So, for example, the foundation runs the grants program, and they help kind of steward new initiatives where it comes to like governance and all these things. It's kind of the foundation that leads all these initiatives.
So, do they also? Is it kind of same like the Moon Builders Academy, or is that different?
No, I think the Moon Builders Academy is just for developers that maybe want to learn more about Moonbeam. Whereas the foundation is kind of the entity or the organization, kind of over Moonbeam. Yeah, where the Moonbeam Builders program is just an initiative within. It's kind of like the grants program. It's these different types of initiatives helped meant to kind of stimulate growth or to help developers build on Moonbeam.
Mm-hmm. Very good. All right. So, is there something else that you want to touch on or talk about to the audience in here? Or shall we have some questions maybe from? I see some hands are up here.
Yeah,
Let's
sure.
see
We can answer questions.
Someone are here that build on. We have someone from Cryptosphere with their hands up. Let's see what they wanted to talk about.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, welcome.
Hi there. First of all, I just want to say I am very impressed with all the progress, and I've been very excited for Moonbeam for a long time. I just wanted to ask you guys, I've been seeing your unique addresses, the new unique addresses skyrocketing on your platform. Is that from people signing up for different apps, like using different apps, or is that just staking, or can you answer that? And then the second question I had was, are you guys trying to get any killer apps, things that are going to just drive mass adoption, things like, maybe some games that are, just go viral? Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that. Thanks for being a fan of Moonbeam. I appreciate it. Regarding the unique addresses, I don't know if there's like a specific catalyst event that led to that like explosion of addresses. I would say it's a combination of different applications deploying on Moonbeam that in turn attract end users, I'd say. So yeah, that's great to see. And I mean, over time, we've seen a kind of a constant increase in applications that are deploying on Moonbeam, right? There's also an initiative called Moonbeam Ignite that's happening right now, which is basically for DeFi protocols. They're incentivizing activity on their protocol. So I think that's been another catalyst. But yeah, it's great to see the network increase in traction and development activity, even throughout this bear market. I think that's a good indication. And then regarding the applications that you mentioned, yeah, I would say from our perspective, we're not really trying to position Moonbeam as the chain for DeFi or gaming or NFTs specifically. I would say we're kind of interested in attracting any high quality team, whether it be in DeFi or gaming or NFTs. At the end of the day, we just want to attract like high quality developers, right? Then inevitably they in turn attract users. I am very interested in, I'm even starting to see like applications that are like cross-cutting between these segments, right? So for example, you might have like a DeFi protocol that uses like different structured products or derivatives or financial instruments that are then represented by an NFT, and then that NFT is tradable in an open market or in a secondary market. So that's something cool that I've been seeing. I'm seeing NFTs that could be used as collateral in order to take out a stablecoin loan. There's kind of some issues that need to be addressed in that segment, but yeah, these are just examples, or NFTs, of course, that are being used within gaming. I think that's a big thing. So I'm starting to see like combinations of all segments kind of between each other, which I think is super exciting. And there's probably protocols and applications that we don't know that are going to be coming to Web3 soon. I'm seeing a lot of it in like the DeFi space, different financial primitives like derivatives. I mean, we've seen kind of the rise of GMX in this area. From our perspective, we just want to attract like these types of teams to build on Moonbeam. It's difficult to pinpoint like what's going to be the killer app, but this is why we want to have like all these tools and infrastructure in place in order to attract these type of developers. Because unless you have all this stuff, devs are just going to go build somewhere else, right? So yeah, I do think Moonbeam has a compelling and very unique and differentiated selling proposition, right? Which is, it goes back to this connected contract approach. And we do see kind of very intelligent people being attracted to Polkadot and Moonbeam because of kind of this messaging. So I am optimistic about the future, despite kind of what we're seeing right now in the market.
I had one more secondary question I thought of. What can we do as, I'm not a techie guy, but what can we do on Twitter or Instagram or other areas to try and help, guide people to this team? Or what would you suggest that we can do as a community to help build up Moonbeam?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would, if you're passionate about Moonbeam and you're a fan, I'd recommend you to join like the ambassador program. That's always open. So you can submit an application, and that kind of helps you get more involved. You have close contact with the team, and honestly, whatever type of contribution you want to make, whether it's kind of making videos or communicating or our own messaging on your accounts, or if you're, you mentioned you're not technical, but if you're technical, you can make contributions, try to make contributions to the tech stack. There's translations you can make, you can organize events. I think if you join the ambassador program, you can get more guidance in terms of like how you can harness your energy and where you can invest your energy. But I would say there's many, help is always appreciated, right? Or even if you know developers or you know a friend that knows a team, referrals are always appreciated as well. So even just talking about Moonbeam is always helpful. I think the ambassador program has been quite successful, and it's been one of the reasons we have a healthy community. So yeah, I mean, without supporters like you, I don't think we would have reached this far.
Thank you, Cryptosphere. Great questions. I had a little question about that also, actually. How are you gonna get the word out there? What's your marketing strategy moving forward now? Do you have like partners that helps you, or is it mostly the community that you rely on, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like a silver bullet, right? That it's just like, okay, if we do this, we're gonna win. I think it's a combination of many things. I think what's very important for us is putting out high quality educational content to begin with. So we've invested a lot of time in our documentation, for example, to have like very well written documentation for developers to use when it comes to building on Moonbeam. Just general educational content on Polkadot and Moonbeam and what makes us special, how you can interact with the network, the messaging, what makes us different, all these things. The community, of course, the ambassador program, being supportive towards them, being supportive towards developers. So I think our developer relations team has been incredibly important in our success, since they're just around the clock wanting and available to support developers when they have questions. I think that's something that is underrated. We've heard feedback that this is one of the things that people appreciate most about building on Moonbeam, is that we try to be very responsive. And having things like the grants program for developers. I think all of these things end up amounting to indirectly towards marketing, right? Apart from the usual announcements and the ton of content that the marketing team puts out to educate users and developers. So I do think it's kind of a combined effort from the whole team.
Great. So let's have some more questions up here. I will unmute Norbert and Samchis. Norbert, hi. Do you have a question?
I do have a question. Hello, everyone. Okay. And you know that ecosystem offer cross-chain bridges and smart contracts. So what is the advantage of Moonbeam compared to those projects? And how do you plan on dealing with competition?
Sorry, I didn't hear. You were cutting up. I didn't fully understand the questions.
Yeah, can you repeat?
Okay, I'll repeat it again. I said there are some few projects in the Polkadot ecosystem that offers cross-chain bridges and smart contracts. So what are the advantages Moonbeam has over all those projects, and how do we plan on dealing with competitions?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, that's true that every parachain within Polkadot has like a specific specialization. I would say we don't view kind of other parachains within Polkadot as competitors, to be honest. I think that the industry is way too small to think in that way, especially within Polkadot, right? We're just thinking that we want other parachains to succeed as well, right? And each parachain has a different use case, right? There's parachains that specialize in decentralized identity, or a decentralized bridge, or a DeFi chain, or a chain that specializes as kind of a decentralized exchange. There's other chains that specialize in like WebAssembly smart contracts. So there's just, I think the success of Polkadot will largely predicate itself on like how effective parachains are, not competing with each other, but actually working together, right? This is what attracted us to Polkadot in the first place, is that you get kind of this this network effect that's very powerful. If each chain can kind of work together and make use cases that interact between chains, I think that's very powerful. When it comes to maybe external chains, like other EVM-compatible chains that are similar to Moonbeam, I would say it comes back to this differentiation that I was mentioning before. Like, we're trying to position ourselves as kind of this cross-chain EVM-compatible layer one, right? And I would say that I've heard that other chains are not particularly, they don't necessarily like this concept, right? Because it's very similar to, I always think it's similar to in the past how you had like protectionism when countries didn't want to trade with each other because they were very protectionist and they wanted to kind of lock in their economy and not expose it to other economies. But over time, it became clear that like free trade and trading between countries is just more efficient, right? And like everyone ends up winning. I kind of view the Web3 space it's in a similar position now, where there's a lot of like tribalism, there's a lot of maximalism where people they like one chain over another. But over time, I think it's going to become inevitable that applications are going to just deploy everywhere. We're already seeing it, right? That applications just deploy everywhere. So now it becomes an issue like, how do these applications actually interact with each other between chains? So we're kind of embracing this, and we're trying to position ourselves ahead of the curve in terms of how can we best serve these use cases instead of trying to kind of lock everything into Moonbeam, because it's just, I think it's just inevitable that you can't do that over time. So yeah, I would say that that's kind of how we're looking at things specifically. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how things evolve in the next years.
Okay, I got it. I have one last question. And so far, what do you see have been the greatest challenge for Moonbeam?
What, sorry?
I said, so far, what will you say has been the greatest challenge for Moonbeam?
The greatest challenge. I mean, there's many. I think, first of all, like building a high quality team to work on these issues or to tackle these challenges. Like having a good team, I think is essential. Like you're not going to get anywhere unless you have a very good team because the thing is, you run into problems like every single day, right? So unless you have a good team, you're just going to constantly be stalled. You need people that can execute. And this is just like on the go-to-market and business side. Then on the technical side, you need very high-quality developers. Because at the end of the day, like Web3, we're like on the front lines, and the industry's evolving every day, right? So a lot of us are working on issues that have never had to be like tackled in the past. So you need people that can that are open, that are smart enough to solve these problems. And then, yeah, just building the network, right? Like getting enough teams to actually building something that developers want to use. That's been incredibly challenging, and it's been a lot of work over the years. And then it comes to like what every department is doing within the team, right? How do you message this? How do you position this from a marketing perspective? How do you build it effectively? How do the developers build like something that's differentiated enough that is compelling for developers to come to your chain? The developer relations, like all the documentation they've written on a day-to-day basis. Basically, every department within the company has like these very unique challenges that they need to solve. So there's a lot of challenges that go into it, and then kind of combined with how the market is doing now, like you have to kind of bear down and continue building throughout the bear market, which is, yeah, it can be. Seeing how things are and the overall sentiment can be tough sometimes, but yeah, you just have to kind of go through it. But yeah, and there's also things that are just outside of your control, right? Things that happen that you didn't even anticipate. So then you have to kind of adjust and adapt and all these things. So there's just a bunch of challenges.
Good. Thank you, Norbert, for your questions. I unmuted Cryptic Professor. Do you have a question? And also, how much time do you have, Francisco? So we don't like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You tell me. Like, I think I'm good. I'm good for now. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Let's go, Cryptic Professor. What is your
Hi,
question?
hi everyone.
Hi.
So there is a term real yield. I recently heard and got impressed too. So I also don't want high risky APR but a sustainable income. So how do you see it and what do you offer as a sustainable income for your tokens GLMR, especially if I am holding at KuCoin and Binance?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I can't really give financial advice in terms of how you can maximize your income. I would say our job is more around like the tech side to actually build the network. So I don't think I can give
Uh,
the answer for this one.
Actually, my question is about sustainable staking like that, something like that. So I can stake my tokens.
Yeah, I mean, staking is available on Moonbeam. So if you go to apps.moonbeam.network, and there's tutorials on YouTube as well, or written tutorials. If you Google Moonbeam staking, you can see tutorials on how you can stake your GLMR.
Okay, thank you, FJ.
Thank
No
you,
worries.
Professor. I unmuted Westside Dot.
Hi,
Did you
I have a
question?
question.
Hi.
For Ink smart contracts, are there any plans for that?
I didn't hear the full question, but I heard Ink smart contracts, and I assume that you ask if there's any plan to support them in the near
That's
or
right.
medium
Yeah.
term. No. I think we're gonna stay as close as possible to the Ethereum network and how that evolves. We're also focusing on kind of these cross-chain use cases. We're not planning on supporting Ink smart contracts. There are other teams within Polkadot that are doing this. So like Astar, and there's another team called Gear, which are working on WebAssembly smart contracts. So I mean that's a whole other kind of space in and of itself. So we think that it's important to concentrate resources into one thing, and we don't really have plans to support that in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Shall we have some more questions? What do you say? How is your time schedule?
Yeah, we can go for it.
I will unmute Yang Mo and maybe Gibson. Takes a while for them to connect. Yang Mo, did you have a question? You have to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, everyone, wherever you are. So, can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So, my question goes this way: What are the next features that Moonbeam network is trying to include into their project that will make a lot of users run into their projects and neglect others' projects? Can you please explain it to me?
Sorry, can you repeat that? You cut up at the beginning.
Okay. I said, what are the next features Moonbeam Network are trying to include into their project that would make a lot of users run into their projects and neglect others' projects? Do you understand me?
Yeah. Well, from I think from a value perspective or value alignment or philosophy alignment, I would say governance and voting is going to be something that personally I think it should attract users, because it kind of empowers the holders of the network, or the participants in the network, to actually make decisions that affect the network. I think that feeling that degree of participation and that you can actually kind of have an influence on the evolution of the network, I think is important. And then I think for the end user, even though Moonbeam is focusing more on developers and not the end user, I would say that this idea of cross-chain use cases and connected contracts, one of the biggest like benefits of that is improving the user experience. So as a consequence, I think that applications that develop these types of apps are going to improve UX, and as a consequence, like there's going to be more and more users that are onboarded. I think that's, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues that Web3 has today. Is just like the UX is not very good, and when you speak to teams, like it's very engineering centric, right? Like you speak to teams and they might have like 20 developers, and then you ask how many like UI UX designers they have, or product leads or things like this, then they might have like one. Whereas in traditional like Web 2 companies, I know like some companies have a team of like 20 designers or like 20 UX and product people, right? Like solely focused on improving the UX. So I think there is like a long way to go in that regard to improve like an application that is based on the blockchain, where you can just use like you would use Uber on your phone, for example. But I think that in order to catalyze and like kind of facilitate those types of applications, you need like the infrastructure in place so that these applications can call functions on different chains so that they're not confined to one chain. And this is kind of what we're working on. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Gibson, for your question.
All right,
What
thank you. Thank you, guys.
Young Mo, are you ready to ask a question now? Young Mo? Maybe not. We have CryptoSwear wanted to say something more, I think. Did you have a follow-up question? Perhaps?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, you were raising your
Okay,
hand
sorry.
again, so
I didn't hear the name you were requesting. All right. Could you just help me understand this? So you're going to have a lot of different apps or projects that are going to be on top of Moonbeam. And, you know, normally, like, for example, ETH, you have to use ETH for any, you know, for any of the dApps on there. So if, let's just say I'm using Moonfit, for example, or let's just say I'm using a project that has a unique token. Am I still going to be using the Glimmer token to interact with that project, or will I not be using that? And if that's not the case, how would you expect that, you know, the fees or the gas fees for Glimmer are going to be burned if you're not necessarily using the native token for the different apps? I hope I made that question clear.
Let me just make sure I understood. So for an application that lives on Moonbeam, but that might also live on Ethereum, if it's executing a function on Moonbeam and on Ethereum, like how that works, is that kind of what you meant, or?
No, I meant you know, like, let's see, give me a name of one of the apps right now that's running on Moonbeam.
Yeah, so you mentioned one, right? Moonfit is one.
Okay, so does Moonfit have its own like token?
I believe it does. Yeah, they have many applications on Moonbeam have their own like ERC20 token. Yeah.
Like for example, BeamSwap. Okay, so BeamSwap has a Glint token. So so my question would be, like, Ethereum burns its tokens by, you know, when the more you interact with its applications on Ethereum. So if I'm using BeamSwap on Glimmer or on Moonbeam, is that burning Glimmer tokens? And if it's not, you know, what's going to accelerate the burn of Glimmer tokens if all these applications have their own native tokens?
Yeah, no, I understand the question now. I mean, it works exactly like it would on Ethereum, right? On Ethereum, there's many projects that have deployed on Ethereum that have their own kind of ERC20 token that lives on Ethereum. But in order to interact with that application, it requires gas, or to execute a smart contract that requires ETH. And it's the same on Moonbeam, right? You might have BeamSwap that they have their own token that they might use for incentivizing users or bootstrapping liquidity on certain pools on their DEX. But ultimately, if you want to carry out a transaction, the underlying token that you need to carry out like an action or a function is always going to be Glimmer, right? So it's the same as it works on Ethereum.
Perfect. Okay, that's great. Good to hear. The other thing that I was thinking, like, so this is on a totally different topic, but so, like, for example, Polygon has like a connection with some marketing director who got, you know, maybe Nike or one of those big corporations to do NFTs on their chain. And I know you're saying you're more focused on getting the developers and obviously like the horse before the carriage, but do you guys consider, how in the long run you can, you can make connections with these big corporations that can get, the big businesses wanting to utilize your chain, and they're therefore attracting mass users because of the big corporation on it?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that we don't rule out like enterprise use cases, and I know that beyond Moonbeam, like Parity, the team behind Polkadot, it has a team like dedicated for enterprise use cases, and a lot of these enterprises. The thing is, like, I think for enterprises, the industry is still at a very early stage. So enterprises very often look towards Ethereum, for example. They just understand it more. Moonbeam is a much younger network, so I do think that we have to make progress to make it more mature. But I know for a fact that Polkadot is in like conversations with a lot of enterprises that are considering Polkadot. And Moonbeam is always at the top of those conversations, right? Because from a development standpoint, it's very easy to use Polkadot through Moonbeam, which I think is one of our biggest added values, is that just the simplicity of use to have access to this broader Polkadot ecosystem. So yeah, definitely. I think over the next few years, I would expect like more enterprises to start using Polkadot and Moonbeam.
Thank you very much.
Great questions, Cryptosphere. And I was wondering, does ever Polkadot come into there also? I mean, who's using DOT, their token or their coin? Do you have to do that when you do stuff on Moonbeam, or is that not at all?
Yeah, I think DOT is used especially for security. So like in order to become a parachain,
yeah, right. Okay.
You have to kind of lock up DOT in order to get a lease for a parachain slot, right? And you also use DOT for staking to incentivize the validators that secure all of the different parachains.
Yeah.
So I would say those are, and yeah, you can stake and you can vote as well in governance decisions within Polkadot. So yeah, I would say it has those are the kind of the main functions.
But DOT is never going to be a fee for people who interact with Moonbeam. Then it's Glimmer.
Yeah, that would be Glimmer, exactly.
Mm-hmm. All right, interesting. So I think time flies when you have fun, guys. It was a pleasure hosting you, and I've learned a lot. And I have 2 more questions, and that is, what do you like on your pizza, Francisco? Do you like pineapples or not?
Definitely not. I'm
okay, sorry.
Traditional salami or pepperoni, depending on where in Italy it's salami. Yeah.
Oh, you're Italian. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm from Venezuela, but I have some Italian family, and when I went to Italy, I asked for a pepperoni pizza, and pepperoni in Italy is just like peppers, and I was like, "What's going on here?" So they just call it like salami. But yeah, I think I'm strictly against pineapple on pizza.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think most Italians are, to be honest, but lots of other people like it. Anyway, another question from Moonbeam here is, where do you see, if you could like vision, what's your vision for Moonbeam 3 to 5 years ahead? Where is Moonbeam then?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I would say that Moonbeam will kind of become kind of as an orchestrator layer for developers that want to build applications, right? Where we've carried out and done the work on many different integrations within the Web3 space, both within Polkadot and connections to other chains. And all of that kind of work with integrations and tooling and all this stuff will end up resulting in developers that just want to build an application. They'll come to Moonbeam and they'll be able to kind of access all of these different use cases that are available in the Web3 space, and in the simplest way possible, right? With the least developer friction. And I think in the future, we're going to kind of see, we kind of see it as a kind of a decentralized cloud infrastructure where you'll have like, I mean, Polkadot is very well built for this, right? Where each parachain can potentially be specific module that a developer wants to use. For example, there's a parachain that might focus on decentralized storage or a decentralized identity or an oracle, and then a developer that kind of builds on Moonbeam, it'll have access to all these different modules that they can pick to use for their applications, similarly to how you would log into AWS and it offers different modules for the developer, right? I think this is kind of a decentralized cloud. I see that kind of future for Polkadot and Moonbeam, which I think is going to be quite powerful. So.
Nice. All right. So for those maybe who were late into this party we're having here with Moonbeam and Moonriver, maybe if you want to like sum it up a little bit, just a few sentences, or like, yeah, have the floor for a minute or two to end this session, Francisco.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm giving you the floor to wrap it up, to maybe sum it up also for those who came in late about Moonbeam and yeah.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, thanks a lot for having us. It's an honor to have participated on this AMA with you. It's always a pleasure, and thanks to all the listeners and to the community that supports Moonbeam. Yeah, I think I said it before. Like Moonbeam wouldn't be here without the support of everyone that's kind of helped us. And yeah, I would say if you're interested or you were curious by the talk or you were attracted by something that I said, just reach out on our channels. I think Peter probably shared some links in the comments. If you want to engage, whether it be through the ambassador program or you just have questions, just join our Discord channel or Telegram, or just reach out to me on Telegram at FJ Agosti, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. And if you're a developer and want to build on Moonbeam, just reach out as well, and we'll try to help out as much as possible. But overall, yeah, thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. It really has been a pleasure, even if you don't like pineapple on pizza. We still like you. And it would be great to have you back, maybe even together with some other projects that's building on your chain or building on Polkadot, so we can have like a little round table or something in the future, maybe next year, who knows.
Yeah, for sure, we'd be happy to come back.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you everyone who come to listen also to this, and there will be some t-shirts as giveaways today from Moonbeam or Moonriver. I'm not really sure.